the reality is the fast and easy way out is the slow way. Like
Yep.
that's actually faster because you're going to get these sustainable results that are going to last you for the next couple of decades. And you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel every New Year's when you're making your
Yes.
resolutions. Like
A
that's
hundred percent.
slower. And
A
so
hundred
it's
percent.
that reframe that I know it's not like as sexy. It doesn't get as many clicks, but like if people want the real deal, like that's what it is.
On today's episode, I have Dr. Anna Pleet here, and I am just pumped for this conversation because Anna is incredibly passionate about helping people understand like what really truly serves your longevity health from a nutrition standpoint, from a medical standpoint, and so much more. So Dr. Anna, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome, Erin. Thanks for having me. I love having conversations, obviously, about health, and it's what I like to do all the time in my free time. But
Yeah.
I was particularly excited to talk to you too, because what you're doing is you're providing like such a wealth of information for a needed group of people who
Yeah.
often get lost in the conversation. Like
Yeah.
moms are taking care of their kids, are taking care of other people. So this is like a perfect opportunity for people to kind of like tune in and take a step back.
Yes, 100%. And, I'd love to kind of start there, and I know a lot of the work you do is really for kind of the older demographic, right? People that are getting later into life, past midlife and beyond, thinking about their longevity. How do they really make the most of the years that they have? But like to your point, we really want to continue to trickle down the education and help moms, families, kids really understand like, what are the best practices when it comes to longevity health? So I know you focus a lot on a lot of different things in your work, but I'd love to kind of start with when you think about weight loss, health space, longevity health, right? Like there's all this information out there about what you need or should be doing in order to be healthy. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit and have you share a little on like what are the best and worst practices when it comes to getting after a weight loss goal or getting after health goals. Like what have you seen and what would you share as far as your expertise goes?
Good question. This is a great place
Yeah.
to start because this is really lays the foundation for thinking about everything related to your health as you're in your mid-adult life and then transitioning forward for decades to come. So this, I think often there's like things that come and go trend wise in the health or the nutrition space. So my background is in nutrition. Then I went to medical school after that. It's so typical that you will see these like passing bys of these hot topics that people sort of get themselves attached to, whether it's
Yeah.
like a specific diet or a specific approach to being healthy. So we've seen things that have come and go, and people are still very much hyped about it. Things like intermittent fasting or get like completely just avoiding a specific food group like paleo and Whole30. Like those were super hot like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a
Yep.
lot of craze online about just going no carb, which can look like a keto or a carnivore
Yep.
approach. When it comes to exercise, there's certain things that have sort of circled through, or people are doing saunas, or people are doing, like ice bath plunges. Like there's a lot of tactics that people attach themselves to for overall health and wellness that
Yeah.
there's a question, is this going to give me some weight loss benefit? Is it not? And I think it's so confusing as like a consumer of information if you don't really have a particular preference for an approach. You just want something that works. Like where do you start? Where do you get your hands wet? What do you take your time to actually try to learn and adapt?
Yeah.
And especially when people are in their midlife, or like let's say they're still early adulthood but they're starting to care for other people, they have less and less time to actually start digging into some of these tactics. Like we're not all Brian Johnson. If your
Right.
audience, I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but he's somebody who's
Right.
like 24/7 committed to his health, and he's doing incredible things. For example, but it's obviously an extreme case. Most of us absolutely can barely find 30 minutes just to go to the gym.
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
so the way I like to frame it for folks, this is what I do in my clinical practice when I'm in the office, or I mean, in the hospital, I'm seeing people at more like high acuity end of illness.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing my online stuff, I like to reframe the difference between getting really committed to things that may help you and the things that we know pretty much help everyone. So
Yes.
starting from actually like a really foundational standpoint, and I like to think of it as like laying the foundation of a house. Like you have to build the strong cement foundation before you can start building on top of it. So there are, for example, if we're talking about weight loss, there are several ways people can be successful at weight loss, whether we're talking about diets or daily routines or the specific foods that are going to target their metabolism in a certain way, what have you, or specific workout routines. There is more than one way to achieve weight loss. The
Yep.
goal that I want people to shift in their minds, or like the reframe that people who are committed to getting to a weight loss goal or to a specific outcome from a healthy approach as opposed to an extreme approach, we
Yeah.
have to start from that point of like, are we trying to do this just to get the result fast? Because if we do, most of the information, most of the media hype is all approaches that will get fast results, and they won't necessarily be sustainable, and they might potentially be dangerous.
Yes.
And so we have to just first take a step back and say, what's our objective? From my perspective, and I work with, as you mentioned, a little bit of an older group. Those are folks age 50 plus who already have maybe had one or more health scares. They
Yeah.
have already a different vantage point because they don't want to hurt their bodies more.
Yeah.
When people are in their teens, 20s, and 30s, they're just not often as aware of the difference of approaching changing something in their body from
Yeah.
a health oriented perspective or just a results oriented perspective. And the
Yeah.
reality is, a lot of stuff out there is not necessarily healthy, but it may get you the results. So like all the supplements and like the meal replacements, and I'm a medical doctor, so I also prescribe medication. I have lots of
Yeah.
folks on GLP-1s, and that's its own
Mhm.
conversation. Super
Yeah.
useful. A lot of people are not counseled about how to approach those kinds of
Yes.
medicines from a healthy standpoint. So
Yes.
medicine included, we have to think first like what's healthy. And obviously we're going to talk, probably that's like the rest of the conversation,
Yeah.
like what are we
Yeah.
talking about with that? But the place I encourage everyone to start is from thinking forward of, what objective am I trying to achieve? How much weight am I trying to lose potentially? Or what is my goal? Maybe I'm having a symptom that I'm trying to
Yeah.
target. And what is the big picture that I
Yeah.
foresee? Like
Yeah.
20 years from now, how do I want things to be going? Do I want to
Yeah.
have regained all the weight and have new health problems added on? Probably not. Nobody wants that. But if the wrong approach is taken, like that will probably happen. And some of these things, like I don't really want us to spend our time talking about too much
Yeah.
trendy stuff, but carnivore diet comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Some very alarming things are being shared online of people's experiences when they try something as extreme as a carnivore diet, where they're
Yeah.
basically just eating meat and butter. I don't know if you eat eggs on that, maybe
Yeah.
potentially, but like that's a very, very extreme. And of course, if you're cutting out whole food groups, you're going to induce weight loss. So that's
Yeah.
the kicker, is like reframing it. Can I do this from a healthy perspective? The answer is always yes. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the conversation is, okay, so how do we do that?
Right. And I love that you're just speaking to just all of the different things that come into play as far as information, right? Because information overload is so real in the health
Mhm.
space. And this reframe that you're talking about, as far as like the objective of the goal and what you really want your life to feel like and look like 20 years from now, like that is so powerful and so important. Because I don't know about you, but for me, like when I was growing up, right, in my teens, early 20s, like I wasn't really thinking that way, right? It was a lot more on the results side of things. And it wasn't necessarily thinking the most about, like, what do I want my longevity to look like? And that's probably the biggest gift inside of this midlife health season, as you start to grow into taking care of other people. Like you said, like you really start to look through this different vantage point, and you really start to understand, like, okay, I need to figure out what are the best practices and how do I make sure I'm making the most of my days and the years that I do have, and what does health really look like? But beyond that, what does it feel like to me? And so I really appreciate your perspective, Anna, because the reframe is really important, right? Really important. I'd love to talk a little bit about, your work in the nutritional realm of things. Like you have a wildly successful influence as far as how you coach people, coach patients, talk a lot on your YouTube channel, et cetera, in regards to the Mediterranean diet. And so I want to kind of move into just talking a little bit more about nutrition because like you said, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of extremes, there's a lot of things that people think they need to do in order to be healthy. But there's a really simplified, better way to think about sustainable wellness habits. And what do those really look like? So can you talk a little bit about kind of the nutritional side of what you teach and coach and share about, and really what that looks like for women like me, women listening, and people kind of in the midlife demographic and beyond?
Definitely. This is, I'm biased, right? It's my favorite
Yeah.
topic. Nutrition has always been a passion of mine. I found myself interested in nutrition kind of early, and I like to just share this kind of this narrative to the conversation because I think it helps put things in perspective for people too of like, oh yeah, like it is about that. So when I was growing up, actually this was started in my childhood. I had two rock star grandparents, my nan and my gramps, and they were really active people. They were like always traveling and skiing, and my nan in particular, like she was gardening and she was teaching, and she was a master gardener. Like she was just this wealth of knowledge and energy. And I remember when I was like really young, being like, okay, this is what grandparenthood or like retirement looks like, is like you get to basically live your best life. And I was always excited to get older because I had
Yeah.
these role models of these very vibrant older people in my life. And then when I got into high school, my grandmother, who I called her Nan, her health really took a corner, like, or turned
Wow.
a corner. It was like things just started happening, and I didn't have a lot of insight at this point. I was like 13, 14 into what was really going on, but it was just like one thing after the other. She was always in the hospital, and then she had a heart attack. Then she was diagnosed with diabetes, and then she had to go in for a cardiac surgery. And she was just like,
Wow.
she had all these recurrent urinary tract infections, and like things just started really tumbling down for her. And she was getting more and more miserable. And then all
Wow.
the while, her husband, my Gramps, was still skiing like into his late 80s. So it was interesting because I started to reflect, and this is what sort of drove me into wanting a career in health and nutrition and prevention, is what were the differences between what Nan and Gramps' experience was. Is it safe to say that everybody's just like predetermined? Was this all just like genetic and she was destined to be in ill health when she got to be older, like age 70 plus? Because it wasn't the case just a decade before for her. Like something happened.
Wow.
So I started to really think on those patterns, and it drove me into the world of nutrition because what I noticed significant difference in my grandparents was that their daily habits were started to change. Like they
Yeah.
were not doing the same daily routine. For example, Gramps was getting up every single day, like 6 days a week. He was in the pool at 5:30 in the morning swimming before
Wow.
work, or before, if it was the weekend, it was still something he didn't change his routine just because it was the weekend. It was like that's what he did. He was just very committed. I don't ever remember him overeating or having seconds. And Nan used to kind of just like eat and eat and eat. And she would be like the last person eating at all of our meals. And it would always be kind of surprising, like, oh, like you need some more. And like there was just stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I started to think about like the patterns of nutritional behavior specifically, and overall like daily patterns to things in people's health that are impacting them. So when I started formally studying nutrition, and I'm breaking down like what are basically all the diets we know about, what does
Yeah.
science teach us, where do these things come from, what is theoretical versus what is truly real world evidence based, I started to shift my thought. And I recognized like when it comes to the world of the science of nutrition, it's a mess. I'm not going to lie
Yeah.
to you. Like
Yeah.
you will always be able to find one study contradicting another. You were never going to find an optimal study because you can't
Yeah.
fully control the environment for somebody's like day-to-day life eating patterns and habits and food
Yeah.
selection, the way it's
Yeah.
so much easier to measure. Like if I'm going to give you a medication that has an active substance in it that I know you're not going to find anywhere else, like I know how
Yeah.
much your body's getting. That is not true of nutrition and food. So it's hard to study this stuff. So where I became excited in the world of nutrition is thinking about the real world evidence of like, well, how are kind of populations eating, or like what does culture have to do with nutrition of like whole groups? And that led me to understand that like there are some pockets of the world where people are eating pretty balanced, and they have been for a long time. And there's some of these like ancient cultures. So now it's really popular. People have learned about what the blue zones are.
Yeah.
But beyond those specific 7 pockets, because that's looking at places where people like live to 100, there are regions that include where those blue zones are, like the Mediterranean region, where in general there's a lot of research that has come out of that area geographically to conclude like on average people who are eating this traditional way are
Yeah.
having really great successful outcomes in their long-term health, and like which diseases they're getting or not getting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's when I really like I've heard of this thing called the Mediterranean diet. Like I had formerly heard about it in my nutrition studies in college, but then I didn't really make the connection of like, wait, that's not just about like this list of foods. It's about, oh, it comes from the real world evidence of like epidemiological studies that were done
Yeah.
decades ago. And like there are these like broad conclusions from millions of people having eaten in a certain way. I found that really compelling. And so I then, when I was trying to figure out like what do I want to do with my life, like I had a travel bug. I moved myself to Italy, and I ended up
Yeah.
doing medical
So
school over
cool.
there.
So cool.
Yeah, thank you. And it wasn't just because like I need to learn about the Mediterranean diet. There was a lot that went into it, but it allowed me to study this thing that we call like the Mediterranean lifestyle from such a different perspective. Like I was just like
Yeah.
living there, and
Yeah.
I was seeing it and seeing the differences too, which is fascinating. How the younger for and like this is true of multiple countries in the region and in Southern Europe, but how specifically the Italian youth has started to change their eating patterns from their grandparents. And we're
Wow.
literally right on this cusp of like you're seeing the health change. Like obesity is on the rise in Italy, mostly amongst the youth. Why? Because those are the people that are now getting KFC and Burger King,
Yeah.
because some of those restaurants have popped up in Italy. And often the grandparents, that generation, they are rejecting that, and they're still just having their home cooked meals the way they always have, the way their grandparents taught them to cook. And like
Yeah.
it's just so fun. Like it's fantastic to like witness,
Wow.
oh wow, these like it's impacting the health. You can see it. So long story short, I started really understanding what this Mediterranean lifestyle was about. And it really gave me this foundational understanding of like, this is what matters. Like it's
Yeah.
about all of it put together. It's not just eating olive oil or avoiding a certain amount of red meat or saturated fat. Like
Right.
we get so fixated on those details inside of like a specific diet protocol that we
Yeah.
think, oh, this is the magic bullet. And actually, it's like when you put all the pieces together of like what someone's lifestyle is all about, how much are they eating overall? Which foods are they selecting? And then
Yeah.
what is their daily routine? How much are they moving? How are they taking care of themselves from a mental and emotional in a social health standpoint? How
Yeah.
much relaxation are they allowing for? Like, for example, in the US, we take like no breaks, and our
Yep.
vacations are just as
Yep.
stressful. Like people take their family to Disney and it's like a mob scene and you're standing in
Yeah.
line all day. Like that is not relaxing. It might be fun,
No.
but that's not
Yeah.
relaxing.
Yeah.
Like it's different on the brain. It's different
Yes.
in terms of its stimulation. So all of those pieces together are playing in to how somebody's kind of setting the tone of their life from
Yeah.
a health or a disease standpoint. And then on top of it, you can always like play the nitty gritty game of like, okay, how many grams of this and how many milligrams of that am I consuming? Fine. But like that's actually way less important than looking at
Yeah.
the big picture. And
Yeah.
so your audience, Erin, it's a lot of moms, let's say, who have
Yeah.
kids and they're starting to think, how can I take care of my kids?
Yeah.
One of the best ways is like show them how you take care of yourself. And it
Yes.
and you're also, unfortunately, you are showing them how you're not taking care of yourself if you're not. They are
Yeah.
watching you and they are seeing you. And so it's not like you have to sit down and teach people like what like calories to count or grams of fat and carbs you need to understand in order for like your kids to be healthy. You don't have to teach them that. You have to show them what it looks like to live in a balanced way, taking care of all aspects of your life. So like people who are really engaged with their church, for example, that's a very like any worship, any like faith, doesn't matter what religion you are, like that plays a huge role in our health. And like people aren't thinking about that. So like I know I went from like nutrition to like, okay, we're talking about all this stuff. But the point is, like, I love teaching Mediterranean diet and lifestyle. Why? Because it's all encompassing of every area of your health. And like when I started to really understand that and make these connections when I was living in Italy, everything that I saw my grandparents made so much sense. It was like, yeah, they lived in the same house and maybe they ate the same foods, very different health outcomes, but they also had very different overall, like how well were they taking care of themselves and like what were they able to engage in. So that's the stuff that like, this is a very long-winded answer, but I encourage people to like start really from that point, even when they're talking specifically about nutrition. Like how is that little piece playing into the whole puzzle?
Yeah, I cannot even say to you how much I love your perspective and answer on this, because this is very much what I teach, what I believe, what I want women and families to understand more than anything, because we've been so inundated for so long with all of these shoulds and have tos and supplements and all the extreme stuff and just the things that don't actually serve longevity health. And to hear your story about the cultural differences in Italy and like really living and breathing it and seeing the shifts in health based on lifestyle choices and food choices and so much more, and thinking about the whole picture, like that really truly is what it is. And I think a lot of times, a lot of the women I speak to, or even in my own journey when I reflect back, like we don't always want to accept that as the answer, right? Like we want there to be some magic thing. We want there to be like some fast track, easy solution for us to implement into the busy lives that we lead. But that's not reality. Like the reality is you have to be assessing every single aspect of your health, your routines, your lifestyle, and then really nurturing each one with intention. It really is the full picture. And so I cannot thank you enough, Anna, for that perspective, because I want women and families and people to hear this over and over and over from so many different people that have this incredible vantage point and understanding of what really serves your longevity best. And this is it. Like, this is it. Anna, the Mediterranean diet is something that I've slowly started to adopt more and more over the past handful of years. You touched on it a little bit, but will you quickly kind of explain what exactly is the Mediterranean lifestyle, the Mediterranean diet? Like, what does that look like in your day to day?
Yeah, great. So I always start from explaining this from the first point, which is the name Mediterranean diet is already kind of a misnomer because, as we've mentioned, it's way more than just the food. So
we'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation.
We can think of it as like I've heard it phrased as Mediterranean lifestyle or the Mediterranean way of living or way of eating. So thinking about the food aspect of it, because that's kind of like the crux. It's this concept of eating a very balanced diet from like food group perspective, like a little bit of everything. There is a group called Old Ways. They're a nonprofit. They made this like Mediterranean diet pyramid, which sort of summarizes a lot of the dietary patterns of that region. Lots of whole grains, lots of legumes or beans or lentils, whole form vegetables and fruits, nuts and seeds, some poultry, some eggs, some particularly high protein sources of dairy like Greek yogurt or feta cheese or mozzarella. And then having meat, especially as a celebratory component. and then not overly depriving yourself, like a little bit of sweets, a little bit of
Yeah.
wine sometimes. Not that those are particularly giving you a health benefit, because they're not. There's still those things that our body like, if
Yeah.
we overdo it, we're going to have a consequence. But it's this
Yeah.
idea of balance built into it from the get-go. Eating Mediterranean means you are eating a whole foods diet, like by
Yeah.
definition. That's the concept. You have to think about like, what have people been eating for hundreds of years? They did
Yep.
not have, icing or pretzels. Like they did
Yeah.
not have packaged stuff. They had to make everything. And by and large, a lot of people who, like most people on the planet, I think a long time ago, were more of like the peasant society, or like
Yeah.
on a poor level of wealth. Like having a middle class is basically a new phenomenon in human history. And so
Yeah.
this is also typically like kind of a cheap and inexpensive diet. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
today everything is flipped on its head. We have government subsidies for
Yeah.
certain industries like animal foods and products, so that changes the price and the access people have. But like traditionally, if you were wanting to eat meat or wanting to get milk, you had to go to your farm or go to your local neighbor's farm and milk the cow and make the
Yeah.
butter and the cheese to
Yeah.
make the cake. Like it took so long.
Yeah.
The things that you had more plentifully are like whole grains, some beans, some vegetables, lettuces, wild berries, like things that just naturally were kind of there more frequently. So you're really eating the nature, kind of
Yeah.
the way it comes to you, and
Yeah.
then using lots of flavorful like herbs and spices built into
Yeah.
it. Like that is true across every traditional diet all over the world. South American cuisines, African cuisines, Asian cuisines, like you'll see it everywhere. But just like you think, like just for example, taking the Italian diet, what comes to mind? It's things like garlic and
Yeah.
onions and basil and rosemary and thyme, like all these herbs, sometimes chili oil or spices, things that are so flavorful. Those give our body a really potent source of something we call antioxidants. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what do you know? That boosts our immune system. That's amazing. And so these
Yeah.
things are not accidental. Like they happen to actually have provided a lot of benefit to humans eating them over hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So that's Mediterranean eating. And then like the concept of the lifestyle is like getting daily movement, a lot of walking, like a lot of
Yeah.
walking, climbing stairs, doing physical labor was always part of life. I think human life, if you had a farm or whatever your profession was,
Yeah.
we're not moving nearly enough today. Like
No.
myself included, like
Yeah.
I'm behind a computer even when I'm seeing patients. And so,
Yeah.
or like the computer's next to me. So like, we're all just like sitting, we're in the car. Like that is not what our bodies were meant to do. We need to
Right.
reframe that and recognize like, unfortunately, we need to go out of our way to
Yeah.
exercise. It did
So
not,
true.
people used to like hit a workout. Like
Yeah.
think of the year like 1350. Like
Yeah.
people weren't working out. They were like
Yeah.
pushing a boulder and then doing
Yeah.
physical field work. Or they
Yeah.
were standing in the kitchen all day cooking for the rest of the family, like whatever their role was. Like people were just moving all the time. So
Yeah.
that's a huge
Yeah.
component. And then like taking the time to rest.
Yes.
Plus staying socially engaged. So people think about like these Mediterranean diet meals are like long and slow. Like you're sitting at the dinner table for 2 or 3 hours, just like laughing, playing music, maybe getting up and dancing every now and then. Someone's telling
Yeah.
a story. Like that is all baked into this Mediterranean diet. So people
Yeah.
need to recognize like it is not just finding yourself a cookbook that's like, oh, this is a Mediterranean recipes. Like I see these videos on YouTube and they make me cringe, but also laugh. It's like, I tried
Yeah.
Mediterranean for 2 weeks and here's what happened. It's like, interesting.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? And they're usually talking about just the recipes. Like,
Yeah.
are they really adapting like a Mediterranean lifestyle for 2 weeks? That would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
So it's all those pieces put together. Like that's what it means to be doing Mediterranean. And it's
Yeah.
way easier than people think. And like, if you're someone who you are not at a place where you feel like you're healthy at all, there's a lot of stuff you got to work on. You don't have to overhaul everything right away. You pick one piece at a time and you start there. Like
Yeah.
that's true for making any change in your life, even if it's like about your financial health or about relationships. Like you cannot just snap your fingers and you get all the results in 1 second. And I know, Erin, you mentioned like everyone's
Yeah.
always looking for it to be this like quick, easy fix.
Yeah.
the reality is the fast and easy way out is the slow way. Like
Yep.
that's actually faster because you're going to get these sustainable results that are going to last you for the next couple of decades. And you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel every New Year's when you're making your
Yes.
resolutions. Like that's
100%.
slower. And so it's
100%.
that reframe that I know it's not like as sexy. It doesn't get as many clicks, but like if people want the real deal, like that's what it is.
It is what it is. The thing that I want to recap that I think is the most important thing to take out of the message you just shared is the value of slowing down, right? And that is probably one of the hardest things I think all of us experience in some capacity because of the busy lives we lead and all the demands and expectations and, add to the to-do list, et cetera. But I found that in my own life, and this is something that I work on a lot with my patients. And I've done this work with coaches too around this concept of slowing down in all aspects of your life in some capacity and seeing how that starts to transform how you really truly feel from the inside out. And, nutritionally, one of the practices and habits that I've been trying to practice or really focus on is like sitting down and trying to be intentional with my food, like actually enjoying my food, realizing what I'm eating, letting it energize my body rather than just like shuffling through it as like another to do and not even realizing what I'm doing. And I think, again, we're so used to the go, go, go mentality, and we have to just get to the next thing, get to the next thing. And from every aspect of our health, we have to be mindful around this concept of slowing down so you can just enjoy what you're doing, right? And not just brush through it all and miss the whole point of what life should really be, which is to have it. You're supposed to experience it, right? We're not supposed to just drive through it without even experiencing anything. And I love that you're speaking to that, Anna. Like that is what I'm getting out of what you're sharing. And that is the most valuable thing that I want people listening to this to take home is thinking about slowing down, like being more mindful, not only from this nutritional standpoint of the idea of the Mediterranean diet, but more so the Mediterranean lifestyle. And I could not love that more. Like it's so good.
It's so
So
good.
good. It's so good. And like when I'm thinking about the women that I speak to, or even me, where I'm at in my life, like one thing that I'd love for you to talk about, and you talked about this a little bit at the beginning, is like, how do we make this manageable, right? Like you kind of talked about this a little bit right now, is this idea of choosing one thing, starting from there. But the truth is we do live busy lives, right? Like we live in a super connected, technology driven world, which can be a blessing, but also majorly a curse for a lot of different reasons related to health, like you're talking about. And I want to continue to share with people, like, how do you make this manageable, right? What are the best practices or habits or things you can lean on that make it simplified, that make it manageable? I'm just curious what you would say to something like that.
Yeah. Awesome question. I'll tell you a quick story because I think this clarifies it. So,
Yeah.
I grew up in the US. I mean, I'm not actually Italian, even though I'm like self-proclaimed at this point.
I love it.
And so I grew up in our culture. I went through our school, our education system. I had the same pressures most kids have, which is like, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to keep studying. I had to get into college, like do all the hustling. So I remember that I kind of started to develop a lot of personal like GI symptoms in my early 20s, which had seen several different kinds of providers. And it was always chalked up to like, oh, you have a little bit of IBS. Well,
Yeah.
that's not like, it's kind of a diagnosis of exclusion. There's not like a
Yeah.
specific thing we can do. So good luck. And that was sort
Yeah.
of where I was at. And then I moved to Italy and I was in medical school. So I was by definition doing something intense. And
Yeah.
immediately I noticed a significant decrease, if not elimination, of like all the symptoms I experienced. And
Yeah.
at first I thought, oh, I know a lot of people talk about how like their grains are different, like they're not GMO because they have certain things banned in Europe.
Yeah.
A lot of people have this experience, like if they're gluten free here, they have all these GI issues. They go over there, they go on 2 weeks of vacation to like Greece, Italy, Spain, and they are eating all this bread and pasta, and they're like not having their symptoms. So, and I thought, oh gosh, it's got to be that. But then I had an experience that really just it clarified in my mind, like I bet this is what it is. So I was studying for some final exams with my two best friends from med school, two Italian guys, and they invited me. Okay, it was finals. We had hours of studying to get through, and my typical approach in college was what most kids do. It's like you find yourself in the library and you
Yep.
grind for like 10 to 14 hours and you just like
Yeah.
clock it in. You barely take a break at all except to like grab an energy drink. Like so
Yep.
many kids, that's their experience of what studying looks like. So I had always prepared myself like, okay, finals is like game time. Like, let's go, like
Yeah.
approach it like a sport. And I go to their house and it was such a different pace. They were like, come over. Like, what time are you at 10:30, 11 a.m.? And I was thinking, like, that's so late. We like missed half the day. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, it's like, do you want a coffee? And I was like, yeah, I'll take a coffee. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And then we sat down and we kind of got into the groove. And it was like 2 or 3 hours of like concentrated effort. And then I was like, okay, let's make lunch. And I just assumed we would like go grab like the equivalent of what's like a sandwich in the US. People eat a
Yeah.
lot of kebabs over in Europe. So I was like, let's get a kebab, something fast. Like let's try to, knock out this lunch time so that we can get back to studying. And they were like,
Yeah.
how much pasta do you want? And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, well, we're going to cook a pasta. And I was thinking like, that's so slow. Like this is the middle of our study day. And they were like,
Yeah.
well, first of all, they're Italian. So they're like, what else are we going to eat? I was like, okay. So we started like cooking pasta and then I was like, this is taking a while, like whatever. We finished lunch, but at this point we had probably already been on break from studying for an hour. And
Yeah.
then they were like, okay, one of us is going to watch our TV show. Do you want to join? The other one's going to take a nap. You choose what you want to do. And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, well, we're going to take another hour of rest before we study again. And I was
Wow.
like, what? And I was like, okay, I'll just like try this because this is kind of fun. Like this is way better
Yeah.
than how I usually study.
Yeah.
And so this is what we did. We did this for like 3 or 4 days in a row. We go to the test and they both like completely crushed it. And I actually performed really well and better than I usually do on exams. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I've studied fewer hours than I've ever studied in my life, but my mind felt so much more clear. I wasn't stressed. Like, I was nervous for the test, like you would be right before. But like in
Yeah.
those days preparing, like I was not grinding. I was sleeping. We were taking plenty of breaks. We were on
Wow.
our breaks. We would go outside and just like lay in the sun. Like it was so different than how I'd
So
ever
different.
approached things. And they were like, this is studying. Like, this is what it means to do fine. Like, they don't stop living their best life just because something is tough. And like,
Yeah.
this was the reframe I was missing from the American culture. I was like, this is the thing that we're not doing. We're not giving
Yeah.
ourselves permission to just do it differently.
Yeah.
And so that, it's not to say like everything in our health is because of our lifestyle. That's not true. But a lot of the issues people are dealing with today, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, risk of dementia, like
Yeah.
several types of cancer, like all of these like heavy hitters, the things that are killing most of us are lifestyle related.
Yeah.
This is not a small problem. And so even if you're somebody who's like in your 30s or 40s and you don't have health problems yet, like I guarantee you, because this is true, if you keep doing the American style of things, for example, of like the grind and go, eating in the car, like meal replacement protein shakes and energy drinks and not getting enough sleep and not eating real meals and taking time, like you're putting yourself at risk for a lot of diseases. And I
Yeah.
don't think people know that. And it's
Yeah.
scary when you start to think of it that way. And so
Yes.
what I would suggest people do if they're like, okay, I'm sold, Dr. Anna's got me, like this is not, I can't keep living the way I'm living.
Yep.
You have to decide where your biggest challenge point is. And yes, it can be scary and hard, but like just identifying it is already a huge step. Huge.
Yep.
Some people, it's like they just never ever get a good night of sleep. They are only giving themselves the opportunity to get maximum 6 hours, and the quality of their sleep is poor. Why? Because they're drinking a lot of alcohol just to fall asleep.
Yep.
We know alcohol significantly cuts down to the quality of our sleep. So you have to decide like what's your issue. Are
Yep.
you finding yourself constantly hungry and snacking and dealing with food noise? Are you feeling like you're constantly anxious and there's emotional stuff getting in your way? Like I can tell you, not to take up too much time answering this question, but I had a patient yesterday and I was seeing her for a thyroid issue and she was delightful. And it came through the woodwork in our conversation that she was really heartbroken and she had at one point burst into tears, and she was just sharing with me like her heartbreak from a situation that happened with her partner, and they went through a breakup. And that's what was we were also trying to target weight loss. So it's like, that's probably the number one thing. And she knew that was getting in the
Yeah.
way of her weight loss, but I guess she had
Yeah.
never shared this with a healthcare provider because no one had
Wow.
really asked.
Yeah.
And she told me that this was like such a helpful visit. And like, I didn't really suggest much. I just like listened and let
Yeah.
her vent it all out. But like, all the things going on in your life are impacting your health, like,
Yeah.
or like the results that you're getting, both
Yes.
positive and negative. And
Yeah.
so you can't just assume that you're you're gonna kind of like get off scot-free if there's a
Yeah.
certain like habit or behavior, like if you're smoking or if you're drinking a lot or if you're kind of shoving your stress under the rug and not addressing certain things, like that, it's not going to come back and like affect you in some way. It will.
Yeah.
So just
Yes.
pick your area, like whether it's
Yep.
diet, whether it's sleep, whether it's stress, whether it's you're not moving your body enough, um, because these things all play into each other. Like Erin, I know you're really
Yeah.
into fitness and like exercise. You talk about this a lot, like
Yeah.
the significant benefits on the other areas of your energy and your health just from exercise alone. Like when you're
Yeah.
chronically tired and you can't sleep well, like the exercise often is like the best medicine for that. And it's
Yeah.
hard for people to like force themselves to move when they're so tired, but hey,
Yeah.
that would work.
Yes, that would work. I love that, Anna. And, one of the things that when I think about like the women that I serve or even my own life, right, or even in this conversation, so much of it comes down to time. Like, how do I find the time? How do I manage this? How do I make this manageable? How do I make it simple? And you just identified exactly what the most profound thing is, which is choose one thing and learn how to focus on that first and really focus on mastering it and then build into more. And I think in the wellness space, we've talked about this kind of several times here. We try to do it all, right? Or we feel like we have to overhaul all the things. And that's not the way, right? Slowing down in order to speed up. I love how you have that in your messaging and just picking one thing. That's what makes this manageable. Because when you identify one thing or your biggest challenge, it ripples into everything else, like you just said. And that really is something that I want women to hear and families to hear, because we assume that we have to overhaul everything at once, but that's not the way either. And so I just appreciate you continuing to share that too, my friend. One last question before we wrap up. I'm thinking about the midlife women listening to this, the moms listening to this, who want to do better for their families, who want to do better for their kids. They want to do better for themselves. They're really hearing what you have to say. And, one of the things that I love most about your perspective, Anna, is you have this like generational knowledge, right? You work with an older demographic. You see people in later life, like really working on their health. And I'm sure you've heard stories and you've seen like the health concerns, and, you are learning maybe what people wish they would have known sooner, right? What do they wish they would have kind of dug into or understood earlier in their life? That is kind of what I want you to touch on, right? Like if we're thinking about the midlife demographic or just speaking to women and moms who are trying to kind of give this trickle-down effect of education, what are the things that you could share with them based on your knowledge and what you've learned as a practitioner?
Yeah, great question. Everything kind of comes cyclical in life. Like we are taken care of by our parents, our grandparents. Then later, if we're having our children, now we become parents. Maybe we're taking care of our parents, and
Yep.
they've become grandparents, but they're now depending on us. Like all of these things cycle through. What people can easily implement to whatever degree they have the ability to do so. I would assume a lot of people want to spend time with their family. Not
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who you have loved ones in your life and you do want to spend time with them, there's no rule that says you can only do certain activities with family, and some has
Yeah.
to be individual. Like
Yeah.
the exercise, the healthy eating, the resting, that can be a family activity. So like
Yeah.
you will see this all over the Mediterranean region and like a lot of parts of the world, like family walks. Like everybody, let's go. Everybody's shoes are on, like grandparents, little kids, like the dog, like we're all going outside for a walk. That is an easy thing to do that costs pretty much no money. Most
Yeah.
neighborhoods have safe places to walk. I know that is in and of itself an issue.
Yeah.
If it's dead of winter and you live in a cold place and like you can't go on a walk outside, like can everybody just go to Walmart or go to a
Yeah.
shopping mall and just walk through there? Try not to,
Yeah.
overly buy things, like, but whatever. I mean, the concept is
Yeah.
like we can engage each other in
Yeah.
getting more movement, getting more activity. Can meal prep time not be a thing that like maybe mom or dad are stuck doing, but like, can we get the kids involved, give them
Yeah.
jobs? Like, you're washing the potatoes, like you're gonna peel the onions. Like, okay, I guess that's
Yeah.
like the worst job to get of everything. But like
Yeah.
getting especially little kids involved in like the hands-on healthy behaviors and activities is so vital. Like, my parents would always take us to orchards when we were kids. Like, it was like, pick your own strawberries, blueberries, and then we did peaches and apples, like whatever season it was,
Yeah.
pumpkins. Like, even just, so many people don't know how food is even comes. Like, they
Yeah.
only see it in the grocery store. It's like a mystery. Like, does this come from a bush or a tree? Does this
Yeah.
come from a cow? Like, it's amazing how disconnected we've become just from our food supply. So like,
Yes.
getting the whole family involved in whatever capacity you can, like, is a great place to start. It's sustainable. You're not necessarily wasting time, you're making time. And we didn't really talk about technology in the modern era much in this
Yeah.
conversation, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's obviously a background theme in everyone's minds. Like, we're on the cusp of like AI takeover of the
Yeah.
world, which is exciting and scary and confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah. 100%.
This, like, kids with the screens, like, is a huge challenge in the modern era. So an easy thing to do is like, make them participate in the things that we're not yet completely giving to technology. Like, I guess we're going to have the
Yeah.
humanoid robots helping us cook, but that's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we do still usually have to cook. And if we want to eat like really Mediterranean healthful meals, ideally this is from a Whole Foods place, instead of like box mixes. So like, there's a little bit of prep involved, like getting people involved.
Yeah.
It's such a simple way to start, to kind of play around with your daily routine to see
Yeah.
where you can get more engagement time together, but like activity that is like
Yeah.
physical movement, allowing for the rest activities together, not just like vegging in front of the TV, but like put some little music on in the background, like everybody grab your favorite book and like do a read and like whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then like
Yeah.
the food prep and like, or food gathering or collecting, like all easy things to do. And usually they don't
Yeah.
cost any money.
Yeah. Leading by example.
Yeah.
And, that's really what I'm hearing the most. And, I feel like, especially as a mom of four, I am thinking about that as much as I possibly can. Like, the things that I feel like I may be doing well and the things that I really need to improve on. Right. And I think that mindfulness and self-awareness is really the name of the game, and thinking about what can I do from a health and wellness standpoint to continue to just lead by example, like do the best I can and lead by example and invite people into the mix. And I love how you shared that, Anna, because I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, we really have to proactively choose these things in the world that we live in the society that we have. Like, unfortunately, it's not as easy and as simple to always choose what the healthier route may be, right? Like, we have to actively get up and move more throughout the day. We have to actively choose to prep our food. We have to actively research where our food is coming from. Like, it's not necessarily this thing that just falls into our lap. And I know that can be overwhelming, but I also want to encourage the women listening to this to know, like, on the other side of starting to make these self-awareness kind of decisions, it just can start to change how you feel from the inside out, how your family feels, your longevity, as you've talked about, Anna, and so much more. And so I can't thank you enough for this conversation. It's just been mind-blowingly awesome. Like, I love hearing your story about Italy. I mean, what an amazing experience. And to have that as a part of your vantage point as you're educating women and families like me and so many others that will listen to this, I just can't thank you enough, because I think, again, sharing our stories, sharing our passions, sharing how we want people to learn is how we all get better, right? Like, we share through, or we learn through sharing. And, that's what I can't thank you enough for doing today, my friend. Quickly, will you share how people can find you online, how they connect more with you, if they want to learn more about the work you're doing and all of the incredible things, how can they connect?
Yes. Well, I have to say thank you, Erin. I'm so grateful that you've created a space to talk about this stuff because,
Yeah.
for example, there's no time to talk about any of this in the doctor's appointments. And then people are kind of left to their own devices to try to figure it out for themselves. Like, these conversations can change people's lives. Like, I've seen it happen. So I just thank you for even like hosting this and like inviting me here. It's just been super fun. If people want to learn more about maybe how to approach adopting a Mediterranean lifestyle and diet, or if you're interested in thinking about like your health as you're getting older, or supporting somebody else who as they're getting older with like really sustainable practices that are based in the real world. The place I hang out the most is on my YouTube channel. That's at Anna Pleet MD. That's like my little tag. I do have profiles on Facebook or Instagram and TikTok, although I'm the least active there. But like if those are your social media platforms of preference, usually younger people are not hanging out on Facebook as much as like my typical audience. But like Instagram is still really popular. I am over there. Same thing at Anna Pleet MD. I am starting to do some more like live streams on YouTube as well. Okay. So I encourage people to like join me. I have like always some free goodies, like some downloadable PDFs and guides and things linked under my YouTube videos. So easy to find, extra resources. And that's really where I spend the most time. So that's the best way for people to keep learning, keep getting involved.
Awesome. And we will make sure everything is linked in the show notes. So if you are interested in learning more from Dr. Anna Pleet or getting connected to the Mediterranean lifestyle diet, all of the incredible information she shares, make sure you check out the show notes and connect more with her. And Anna, thank you again for your time today, my friend.
Thank you, Erin. It's been so nice, and hope to have another conversation at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.